Hello, and welcome back to your Dream Coach podcast. My name is Shayla, and I'm really excited about our topic today. I was going back and forth with a friend last week talking a little bit about this subject of fear, and both her and I have been working on things outside of our day to day business to really get out of our comfort zone, make our dreams come true. And it's kind of fun when you turn the whole idea of fear, and fear can look a lot of different ways. It's fun to get out of that comfort zone when you reframe how fear really is what it's going to take to accomplish those dreams and to get out of that comfort zone. And I was reading an article the other day about fear and how it can really be a sign of opportunity. And I love this article because it says just because sometimes we feel fearful doesn't necessarily mean that something is inherently bad. And isn't that interesting that as we grow older in life, fear has pretty negative a feeling, right? Or negative meaning in most of our lives. But when we think back, haven't you ever been afraid of something good? So perhaps you were really close to someone you admired and were nervous about telling them maybe that you like them. Well, those butterflies that we experience are actually the same biological response triggered if we were to see like a super scary skeleton or, something that kind of freaked us out. And that fear or anxiety that we face in such moments remains the same. So the only thing that changes is the context and perception of the sensation. So if we can teach ourselves to see fear as a sign that something is changing rather than a direct consequence of that change, you allow yourself to become empowered by your fear. And so I'm excited to jump in to talk a little bit about all the different types of fears that we face to really gain success, to make dreams a reality. And I'm excited to dive into the idea that failure isn't a setback, it's not negative, but we need that fear of failing as stepping stones to get us closer to success. And you might have heard that phrase before, that failure is not an option. But what if I was to say that the failure is not only an option, but it's actually necessary, right? We need to fail. Failure is an essential part of the journey towards achieving our goals and for us to getting closer to making some of those dreams that we want to go after a reality. And thinking back to our early years, learning how to walk or ride or even read, we've all failed hundreds, if not thousands of times. But I'm pretty confident to say that most of you listening today are walking or riding a bike or reading or hopefully all of those things. So if we think about it, pretty much every successful person in the world has a story of failure that they've used to empower them to create success. And some of the really popular ones you've probably heard are, Thomas Edison and creating the light bulb, or J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter, Michael Jordan and basketball, even Walt Disney and Disneyland. And if I think about those even, really famous stories of failure, man, this world would be pretty empty without some of those people giving up on their fears. It'd be a pretty dim world if we didn't have light bulbs. And we know how much joy Harry Potter has brought to millions of people around the world. How inspiring Michael Jordan has been with his story of failing and setbacks. And Disneyland, I mean, man, for those of you that had an opportunity to experience the magic of Disney, man, we'd be missing out on a lot of magic if Walt Disney gave up on his dreams. So when we think about fear, it really can manifest as feelings of anxiety, apprehension, or dread, and it often involves anticipation of the future. And I know for me, this is where I think I sit in a lot of with fear is what if. And I was listening to a podcast just a couple weeks ago that talked about 85% of the things that we actually are afraid of don't actually happen. And I've been really hanging on to that statistic lately because so much of our fear actually hasn't even happened yet. And there's lots of different types of fear. And some of the most common ones, of course, are like fear of failure, fear of rejection. But there's lots of other types of fears that can come up for us too. Fear of maybe loss of control, fear of the unknown, I know can be a really big one. Fear of just getting out of our comfort zone. And you've heard me talk about that's really where we get that growth. Fear of maybe past experiences or attachment to the status quo. Fear of social pressures. I know that's a really big one right now. Fear of making mistakes, right? Looking silly and failing and having our standards that we want to really live up to. There's fear of judgment, fear of financial insecurity, and even just fear of disappointing others. So I don't want to go into everything today, or else we'd be here all day long, but I did want to dive into some of the really common ones that I feel like resonate with me and really are what I feel sets me back sometimes from living the life of my dreams, and some of the things that I've sat with and had to really grow through, because I've got some really big dreams on my list and I don't want these fears to hold me back. And so the first one I believe that most of us can really familiarize ourselves with is that fear of failure. And I see this a lot with a lot of my coaching clients and in the sales industry that I work with, is that many people are really afraid that they're not going to succeed. And that leads to that self-doubt and hesitation of taking lots of risks. And the fear of failure is a pervasive and common emotional response that's characterized by that comprehension, anxiety, and dread associated with the possibility of not achieving a desired goal or outcome. And so when we think about some of the dreams that we have in our lives, things that we really want to go after, and whether that's a dream of a better relationship, or some maybe academic pursuits, career aspirations, creative endeavors, some of these dreams that we really want to go after, that fear of failure can hold us back. And the fear of failure stems from a combination of factors, including perfectionism. So we've really been working on that idea with some clients that I have of progress, not perfection. And I think if we all could live in this perfect world where everything was, planned out and the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted, sure, we would hold back until everything was perfect. But that's just not the reality sometimes when we're going after these dreams and things that we want to make happen. One of the key aspects of the fear of failure is the anticipation of negative consequences or outcomes. So lots of times we imagine those worst case scenarios, such as humiliation, disappointment, loss of respect, and that can sometimes paralyze us from taking action or pursuing those goals. And the fear of failure can be fueled by comparison to others, unrealistic expectations, maybe it's past experiences or rejection or disappointment. And these are all factors that can really contribute to that cycle that we can get stuck in, that really holds us back from just going after something and that opportunity to really grow and learn. So overcoming that fear of failure involves challenging negative beliefs and perceptions, building resilience, and adopting that growth mindset that I've talked about before, to embrace setbacks as valuable learning experiences rather than reflections of our worth. And I just want to emphasize that again, right? So really embracing those setbacks as valuable learning experiences, right? So just so key that we're continuing to learn, fail, make mistakes, get back up, and having fun with it, right? Being playful with it. That I think is so key as we pursue some of these really big goals and dreams that we have, that we want to pursue in life. The second one I wanted to dive into is that fear of rejection. I think that's a big one that holds us back, is, that fear of being judged, that fear of what other people think, putting ourselves out there and having that emotional reaction or that response that pulls up those feelings, and thinking about all the different ways that rejection could play into that. Individuals that experience that fear of rejection often harbor deep-seated insecurities or negative beliefs about themselves, lots of them not even being true. So fear of rejection can be based on the rejection or abandonment from the past, could be a rejection of what we think is going to come in the future. Lots of times, because of the world that we live in, the world can really set us up to feel, that rejection and those insecurities. And so again, important to just have some fun with this. And again, a lot of the fears that we have of rejection aren't even true. There are lots of times the little stories that we have in our head. And so if your dreams and goals are big enough, let's not worry about that rejection. And when that comes, we look at that as to be expected. I think as we go after some dreams that are really going to push us out of our comfort zones, is that all these things are to be expected. And if we go into the plans or the goals that we have, knowing that some of these things are going to happen, when they do happen, they won't have as big of an impact on us. And the last one I really want to dive into is one that I know I've struggled with a lot in my life. And this is always an interesting one to talk about because it doesn't seem like it's a fear. It seems kind of crazy that this could even be a negative thing, but it's fear of success. And surprisingly, the fear of success is also common because it comes with increased expectations, responsibilities, and sometimes it can even tie into our identity. And depending on, all the past experiences that we've had, and I think that that is such a cool thing about how life is that we really are that blueprint of everything that's happened to us. So whether it is fear of success, or it's the fear of rejection, or it's fear of failure, or all the other fears I mentioned, so many of these fears come from all the experiences that we've had in our life. And so the pursuit of success is often perceived as sometimes that noble endeavor, yet can be hidden beneath the surface, or hidden behind the surface lies sort of that complex, overlooked emotion. And it's an interesting fear, and one that I've definitely dabbled with of what will people think? And if I go after this, what does that look like? And what kind of light does that put me in? And so the fear of success stems from lots of different, sources or insecurities, that the expectations and responsibilities that typically come with that. And I know for me, when I think about some of these fears, is the fear of success is putting myself in maybe a different light from other people and how uncomfortable that makes me feel. And it's interesting because I've really discovered through coaching clients and through my own path and journey in life is that lots of times who we are when we hit certain dreams or goals or levels of success, all the fear that takes to overcome that is typically that next level of life or success that we accomplish really just allows us to become more of who we are. And I've really learned that over my years of sales experience and coaching and mentoring people, is that these fears, once we overcome them, is that it's kind of empowering to allow us to just be more of who we are. So when we think about fear of failure, when you've overcome failure yourself, that can be really empowering to inspire other people and to mentor and to coach and to guide people. When I think about the fear of rejection, right? When we've gone through that ourselves, just how that makes us more confident and makes us more excited to go after things without having that fear because we've overcame that. And then the fear of success that I was just talking about is it allows us in various ways to really, really shine and be confident. And success can look lots of different ways. So the failure of success, or the fear of success, I should say, is just an important one to dive deeper in. And to even know that that is a fear, I think is also key, because lots of times we don't talk about that. And I have found that that fear of success has allowed me to really adopt a growth mindset, being more curious, looking for opportunities to grow, looking for ways to be challenged. And so the fear of success, by recognizing that and embracing it, can definitely allow us to unlock our full potential and just live a really full life. These fears that I touched on may require introspection or self-awareness and courage to overcome, but just knowing that fears are so necessary to live the life of our dreams, right? So some actionable steps. Where do we go from here? Well, let's just take a minute after we listen today, or if you have a pen and paper, to just identify, right? Our lives are so busy that if we don't really take time to reflect on our fears, we can just continue to be in that same cycle over and over again. So, what are some things that are on your dreams list that you really want to go after? And then let's identify the fears that are holding us back. Another thing that I would jot down is to challenge those negative thoughts. So once you've written down a couple of these dreams that you want to go after, and you've figured out what are some of the fears holding you back, what are the negative thoughts that are creeping in? What's that self-talk that's there that we need to squash? Practicing mindfulness. So thinking about having that dream in mind and working backwards with all those fears is staying present in the moment and focusing on right now, right here, not worrying about the future. But what can we be mindful of today that's going to help us put us on the path to make that dream come true? For some dreams, it might even be seeking support we might have to seek some support to overcome some of these fears. And I know for me, some of my, my coaching calls that I have for myself, or even if it's, meeting with a psychologist to dive into some of those limiting beliefs, has actually been really great support to get closer to some of those dreams on the list and not letting that fear creep in, whether it is the fear of success or rejection or failure, however we want to, label those fears. Setting realistic goals. So I know that for many of us, we've got a long list of dreams, and breaking some of those larger dreams down into smaller actionable steps can also help eliminate some of the fears. Is sometimes the goals or the dreams that we have on our list are really big, and it might be fearful to think about, oh man, how am I going to get there? So how do we take a really big dream and breaking it down so that that fear settles a little bit? And taking action, right? After listening to this episode, how do we even pick one dream, write down the fears, some of the things holding us back, what kind of support do we need, and then taking action. So taking action towards confronting those fears, right? We get one life. We get one life where we can just live the best one ever. And I'm telling you that when you get to start living a life that is built on all the dreams that are exciting and bring you so much joy, it's so fun. And lastly is celebrating those successes. So what's really cool is as we grow through fear, is that we usually don't go backwards. And when you overcome a little fear, we celebrate that. We celebrate that because that is positive momentum towards that continued growth and personal development. And so when we think about everything that ties into fear, and failure, right? And just how awesome failure is. And failure is just a feeling, and we can give it positive or negative, right? Feelings to go with it. And let's just rewrite the story. And so failure builds character, failure fosters resilience and humility and grit, determination, self-reflection, adaptability, flexibility, so many positive things come from failure. So how do we rewrite the story of how we think of failure? Can failure be our friend instead of something that makes us worried or anxious? Can we start to reframe our mindset that, oh man, I just failed today. It was awesome, right? Because when we're failing, we're growing, we're developing, and we're shaping ourselves into stronger, more resilient and compassionate human beings. So the next time you encounter failure, don't be discouraged. Embrace it, learn from it, use it as fuel to propel you closer and closer to more of those dreams on your list. Thanks for tuning in today.